good evening, noswaith dda, and welcome to Welsh Lamb Monday. Today we will be discussing the first trial results, and we've got an exciting evening for you today. So my name is Dr. Larry Thomas, and I work on the Welsh Lamb Meat Quality project, and I work at Hubby Cymru Meat Promotion Wales, and we'll be discussing then the first year trial and giving you an introduction about what we were researching and looking at. And then we'll also pass over then to Dr. Linda Farmer, who will be presenting then more information about consumer taste panels and also about the results then from the eating quality results and also the nutritional quality results. So so Dr. Linda Farmer then works at AFBI, which is the Agri-Food and Biosciences Institute, and is a meat scientist who specialises in consumer taste panel work and also in flavour analysis. So welcome, Linda. So firstly, I'll just describe a bit more about the trial and a bit more about the project and what we've been doing here at Hubby Cymru. So the project was designed to look at three different aspects in the majority. So we were looking at differences in muscle cut, where we were looking at the loin, the chump and the top side, and also breed types, where we were looking at hill breed types, crossbred and terminal sire breed types. We were also looking at lamb gender. So we were looking at castrate and ram lambs. And we were looking at 96 lambs then, which were all from PGI Welsh Lamb and across the whole of Wales. So we were looking at these three key aspects, and we wanted to know further about eating quality results in particular. So we were wanting to gain further feedback and understand how these on-farm and also factors then can affect the eating quality of Welsh lamb. So what we did then is to collect these different samples and then do a consumer taste panel where we get people from the public to try Welsh lamb and to give us feedback on what they think of it in terms of tenderness, juiciness, flavour and overall liking. With that then, we also did this at 3 different locations, and Linda will describe this in more detail. We were collecting the samples then last year in November until January 2020, and then in late January then we commenced then the consumer taste panels, and we were very lucky to hold these events then before COVID restrictions took hold then in March. Okay, so this slide here then just shows you that we used 96 lambs, and they were from 22 farms across Wales. And these then were different farm types, and also, as I mentioned earlier, the different breed types, and also looking at castrates and ram lambs. The grid here shows that the grades that we were using then within this first trial, and also we were after a target specification then of over 16 kilo dead weight, and that is so that we've got enough sample for the consumer taste panel work. So I'll hand over now to Dr. Linda Farmer, who will be describing more about the consumer taste panel work, the results from the meat eating quality trial, and also the nutritional quality trial. Thank you, Linda.
Thank you very much, Larry. My name is Linda Farmer, as Larry has said, and I'm head of food research branch at the Agri-Food and Biosciences Institute. And I'm talking today on behalf of my colleagues Terence Hagan and Colin McRoberts and their teams, who've done most of the work that I'm going to be talking about this evening. Oops, I think it says I can control your screen here, Larry. All right, let's try again.
That's okay. If you go up.
Apologies for the slightly technical glitch here. Okay, right. Many apologies. Technology is getting the better of us slightly here. Okay, this is the first trial of a project that will run over a number of years. And as Larry's already described, we're looking at breed type, gender and muscle. And we had a total of 480 consumers. And I'm going to be talking to you about the results of those consumer panels and the analysis of fatty acids. And the consumers were not just asked about the palatability of the meat that we were giving them, they were also asked socioeconomic questions about their age, economic status and such like, but also their behaviour when it comes to purchasing lamb, and indeed their willingness to pay for better quality, and we'll come back to that later. So we ran the panels in 3 locations, in Belfast, in Cardiff and in Newport, Shropshire. And we had 160 consumers at each of these, and we ran the panels in January and February. And as Larry says, that was very good that we managed to get all that in before we were locked down. So the samples were all cut to the same thickness. They were grilled in a commercial clam grill to a specified internal temperature and plate temperature. They were all given 7 samples, but only the first sample was not analysed. That was just to get rid of any bias. So we analysed the 6 samples after that. And the sample presentation was totally balanced over the 3 locations and the different muscles, the different treatments, and the different panelists. So we started off with a welcome and an introduction to the panelists at in each evening. In nearly all cases, these are people who've never been to a panel before. And then they did the socio-demographic questions, and then they had a panel for, such as the one as you see on the right there, to score each sample. And they scored liking of aroma, tenderness, juiciness, liking of flavour, and overall liking on a 100-point line scale. And they put a vertical line on it, as you can see with the red marks there. And then they had to score for satisfaction against 4 categories at the bottom. Was it unsatisfactory, satisfactory everyday quality, better than everyday quality, or of premium quality? And then all of those were gathered up at the end of the day, and we took those home and scanned them in a specialist scanner, and we did the stats on it. And on the evening, we handed them all over to Larry and her team, who gave them a presentation on Welsh lamb. So I'm going to talk about some of the results that we got. I'm going to look at the effects of the main treatments that we were looking at, the effect of other recorded factors where we had enough information to do a preliminary analysis on that. The other recorded factors were not in a totally balanced design, but they gave us an indication of whether there was anything there to look at. And then some of the socio-demographic questions and what they tell us about the consumers. Okay. Yes, this slide's not okay. So in terms of the effects that we got, the most significant effect we had was of muscle or cut, and the muscles showed a significant difference between the different muscles in terms of particularly tenderness, juiciness, flavour, and overall liking. However, all of them scored sufficiently highly to be good scoring. They're mostly scoring about 60 or above. So the chump and the loin were especially liked, but they all had good scores. I'm sorry, the slides are jumping a little bit, which is...
Yeah, do you want me to take
seem
control?
to be missing a slide.
Do you want to...
Can you take control? Because I think I'm yes, that's what threw me a little bit. There should have been a slide before that one.
Okay.
There we go. That's the one I was expecting to see. Many apologies, everybody. Again, the technology's beaten us slightly. Okay, so in terms of breed type and gender, these were the main factors we were looking at. And this shows even more clearly that all of them, whether we're looking at crossbred or hill or terminal breeds, and whether we're looking at castrates or rams, they all scored more than 60 for all of the traits. So you can see all of these figures are more than 60 and all of these are more than 60. So all of these are on average scoring well for all of the different traits. But there was no significant difference between either the rams and the castrates or the breed type, the different breed types. So if you'd like to move on now, Larry. but we did get a difference in muscle, and I've just shown you that. If we look then at some of the things that were not balanced by the experiment, but where information was recorded, the farmers were good enough to record what diets they had fed to the animals, but the experiment was not balanced for diet because that wasn't the purpose of it. But we had the information, so we did a bit of an investigation of that. But there was no significant effect of those different diets. But what we want to do in subsequent experiments is to do a balanced experiment and investigate that further. There was no difference between the category, the Europe category conformation score of the animals, and that's what I would expect to see, because it's exactly what we've seen also for beef. There is no relationship between conformation score and eating quality. Neither was there any difference between the different fat grades that we had, but we might have expected a little bit more juiciness in the fatter ones, but again, the numbers it was a fairly tight group, and the numbers were mainly focused around the middle category grades there. So probably to investigate that fully, we would need a wider spread of fat grades to look at that. So that leads to the question, is all the lamb good, therefore? And I wanted to show you this because it shows that even though everything is averaging 60 or 70, and you can see that that's where most of the lambs are. The y-axis on this graph is number of animals, and then the groups along the bottom are scores on the average sensory score from the 10 people. So you can see 60 to 70 is the main score that people are giving. But there are some of the lambs coming out over 70. We've got 18% of the lamb coming out scoring 70 or higher, and that's very good. But there's also 12% that scores 50 or lower, and those are the ones where you'd really like to find out why, so that you can put it right and get all of the lamb up at the top end. So we also asked them about how willing they were to pay. If you remember, they were scoring on this satisfactory scale. So every piece of meat was scored in terms of satisfactory quality. And then at the end, when they'd done all the panels and scored all the bits of meat, we asked them to say what they would pay for each grade. And what this is showing is that if you look at the dark grey colours to the left, you can see that's what they would pay for unsatisfactory lamb. And the answer is not very much. So they really don't want to pay for unsatisfactory lamb, which is what you would expect to see, and I'm sure we'd all agree with that. If it's satisfactory, then you get a different curve, and you can see that on average they're willing to pay between £6 and £9 a kilogram for satisfactory lamb. But if you can create lamb that's better than every day, then they're willing to pay £12 a kilogram for it. And if you manage to get it into the premium category, then they're willing to pay on average about £18 a kilogram for it. So this is showing that people do see themselves as willing to pay extra for that extra quality. Okay, I wanted to show you a few of the results from the demographic the questions that we asked. And one of the things we asked is, how often do you consume different cuts? So we asked them how often they consume chops or cutlets. And what you can see is that the over 65s, most of them eat chops and cutlets at least weekly or monthly. That sort of goes down a little bit as you go down the age range. But when you get down to the 18 to 24-year-olds, then they're also eating chops fairly often as well. Whether this is because some of them are still at home, or whether it's because they find that chops are nice and easy to cook, we're not quite sure. But anyway, we saw that trend for those two groups, and the same trend for ready meals. So the oldest folk and the youngest folk go for ready meals. Younger people tend to buy cubed lamb or minced lamb as well. I'm not showing that here. And the younger folk and the late middle age will buy a leg of lamb, but not the over 65s. Presumably it's too large for them at that stage. So what this tells us is that there is a difference in what young people are looking for, and that maybe there's a case for marketing for young people in that way. And the next slide illustrates that a little bit further, in that what this one is showing, we were asking them what was important to them and what was their experience of eating lamb and was it easy to prepare. And they had to score from 1 being very difficult and 5 being easy. And what you can see from here is that the over 65s found it lamb easy to prepare. So they scored at either a 4 or a 5. But the 18 to 24-year-olds scored it 1, 2, or 3, so on the difficult side of middling. So you can see there's a very clear graduation there with a bit of a break at about 44, 45 years old, where people find it hard to prepare or easier to prepare. And this information could be very useful in deciding what products you're going to prepare for that younger age group and how you're going to market them. We also asked people how important to them were certain factors, and this is the results for nutritional quality and the healthiness of the lamb. And what you can see is that the people who thought it was very important in that left-hand graph were the older people, the over 65s, the 55s, the over 45s. The younger folk found it to be a bit less important. And that trend is also shown even more so when you ask them about the importance of animal welfare and environmental impact on the right-hand side. So we think of the young folk as being the conscience of society at the moment, but when it comes to lamb, it's the older folk who are thinking about these sorts of factors. It may not be politically correct to say so, but there was an effect of gender also. And there was a significant difference between men and women, with women tending to put a significantly greater importance on the factors that we've just put up on the screen. Moving on then to the fatty acids, looking first of all at the effect of the main treatments, again, there were very few effects of breed type or gender, but most of the fatty acids differed between the muscles. And if we consider the effect of the other recorded factors, there were some effects of farmer-recorded diet, and I'll show you those in a moment. There were no effects of conformation, and fat class increased the amount of intramuscular fat and total fatty acids, as you would expect. So if we move on to the next one, this shows you an example of the comparison of the 3 muscles we're looking at. And what you can see from the 3 on the left there is that the total fatty acids, the saturated fatty acids, and the monounsaturated fatty acids were highest in loin, and then in chump, and least in topside. And if we click again, Eleri, and we look at the polyunsaturated fatty acids, I've exploded the diagram up a little bit, we can see that it shows the opposite tendency, and the loin has the lowest levels of the polyunsaturated fatty acids. And you may have heard of the omega-6, omega-3 ratio, which I'll explain more in the next slide. But if you click once more, what we can see is that shows the same pattern. So the lowest omega-6, omega-3 ratio, and low is good in this context, is again in the loin. So if we consider the omega-3 fatty acids, these ones are supposed to be good for us because they're good for our cardiovascular systems. And a common measure of whether the lamb has the right fatty acids in it, or any meat for that matter, is its omega-6 or N-6, N-3 ratio. And ideally that should be 1 or very close to it, and ideally between 2 and 1. But often you find it's actually quite a bit higher than that in lamb. But the average over all of the Welsh lamb that we tested here was 1.3, and that is good. But there was evidence that this ratio is affected by muscle and to some extent by gender, because the castrates were fatter, and also by the reported diet. And the graph on the right is showing the effect of the reported diet. And what you can see there is that the highest level came from the lambs that were fed on concentrates with a bit of forage. and then those that were fed a mixture of grass and concentrates, or roots and brassicas and grass, and then the lowest and best omega-6, omega-3 ratio was from the lambs that were fed on grass only. So if you can click once more, Larry, we can see that we get a value from grass-fed lamb of 1, which is pretty well ideal. So in conclusion, there were no significant effects of gender or breed type on consumer scores, and very few effects on the fatty acids. Muscle had the most effect for consumer scores and fatty acids. The N-6, N-3 ratio was good, especially for the grass-fed lamb, and nearly all the lambs scored well for the palatability traits that we were recording. Thank you very much. I'll hand back to Larry.
Thank you, Linda. Thank you for that. So yeah, some really interesting results and things that we can use, and great feedback that we can use to help market and promote lamb. So that's really good. So next steps that we're looking at now is to look at lamb finishing diet this year, also growth rate and aging period of lamb, and to understand how these have an impact then on eating quality and nutritional quality of lamb. With this diet trial as well, we're going to 3 different locations then to do the consumer taste panel work. So we'll be going to visit consumers then in London, Chester and Birmingham, which is really good. And as we have a captive audience when these groups come together, which is really good, we then also do a Welsh Lamb presentation so that the groups can understand where Welsh Lamb comes from, where they can buy it in the shops, and to also understand more about the sustainability and the nutritional value then of Welsh Lamb as well. When people do come to these events, they're from a wide range of different backgrounds, demographics, ages, groups. It's really an interesting and great event to be part of. We also encourage them then to be a part of different competitions that we do, and also to sign up to the Lamb family. So the Welsh Lamb family then is a recipe email address then, so people sign up and they get seasonal recipes then also delivered, all about Welsh Lamb, and which is really good. So what we've got now as well is the Welsh Lamb Meat Quality first year report. So this will be going online as well tonight, which is really great. So if you want further details about this first year report, you can find it there on the website at meatpromotion.wales, hubbykeek.cymru. Also, you can follow us on social media then for further updates on the project activity and what we're up to. And if you want further recipes or ideas, then please go to Eat Welsh Lamb and welshbeef.com. So thank you very much. I will now hand over to John Richards then, who will be chairing the question and answer session.
Okay, diolch yn fawr, Larry. At the moment, we've still got the slide up, so we'll get rid of the slide now, and hopefully you can see us all and see the speakers. And what we can do then is start the question and answer session. So, noswaith dda I pawb. Good evening to everyone. What we'll do now is we'll host a short question and answer session with the speakers. First of all, hopefully everybody enjoyed that very interesting presentation. The Welsh Lamb Meat Quality Project is one aspect of the Red Meat Development Programme, which is a programme that we are running as HCC. We'll be running it for the next 3 years. So it's from 2018 through to 2023, and this is an important aspect of it, because hopefully what we gain is the information and the insight then into how to continue to ensure that Welsh lamb is seen as a premium product in the protein market then. And this information, and already we're starting to see the fruits of that labour then with the kind of results that we're getting through at the moment. So, as I said, we've got an opportunity now to do a short question and answer session with our 2 speakers. So, if anybody's got any questions, please put it into on Facebook, and we'll pick it up and we'll ask our speakers as the evening goes on. But first of all, then, and again, thank you to Larry and to Linda for your presentations, your very informative presentations. One of the first questions we've got, and I'll take Chairman's prerogative, and the first question is for you, Linda, and it's why was the difference in juiciness between the cuts in your view? Because you've done a lot of these consumer taste trials over the years, and I'm just wondering, in your experience, what would have been one of the main reasons for that difference in juiciness?
The difference in juiciness between the muscles?
Yes, yes.
Yes. Yes, sorry, I'm not hearing you perfectly. No, the main difference is probably because of the different fat levels in the muscles. And those muscles that have a slightly higher fat level tend to be a little bit more juicy. And that explains why the top side was less juicy than the chump and the loin. It doesn't explain why there was a slight difference between the chump and the loin, because they were a bit closer in juiciness and they didn't follow the pattern exactly. So there must be other factors in play as well there. But the main difference is due to the intramuscular fat that's in the meat.
Okay, and a question for you, Larry. It was quite interesting about the different consumer taste panels that were being used there. A couple of questions is, how do you select where to hold the taste panel? And secondly, how do you decide who gets to become a member of the taste panel then? Is there selection criteria, or how are those?
Okay, yeah. So what we do then is to also ask our marketing team.
I'm sorry, John, you're breaking up considerably.
Okay.
Okay, sorry, Linda. I'll take this one. So yeah, we asked the marketing team at Hubby Cymru to understand what areas and what parts of the country do they want to get more feedback from, where are our target audiences. So we're looking at using different cities, especially so that we can target different audiences and different consumer groups. When we go out to these locations, then we are after different age groups, as I said, so they've got to be over 18, and yeah, and so we want a range of different backgrounds, different social groups. So for instance, the previous trial in trial 1, we were having people from sports clubs or running clubs. There were also people wanting to come involved from WI groups and all sorts of different backgrounds, which is really great. And that's exactly what we're trying to target, people who enjoy lamb and want to give us feedback. And it's also an educational event as well, because they get to understand a bit more about meat quality and understand that there are differences in eating quality of different cuts, and to understand a bit more about what we're doing at Hubby Cymru to promote Welsh lamb. So it's all very positive.
Okay, great. Question for Linda. Hopefully you can hear us, Linda. We've got a question here about the kind of grilling technique, or the cooking technique then, if you like, for the lamb. So how were the lamb samples grilled?
They were grilled on a commercial clam grill. It's called a Silex grill. It's a very big, heavy grill that gives a very consistent cooking temperature, so that we can cook 10 samples all at once, spaced out on the grill, and all to the same internal temperature. And we cook them for a very precise amount of time. There's precise thickness, precise amount of time, and then they're left to rest for a precise amount of time before they're served to the consumers. And that way we can be sure that we're being entirely consistent in the way that they're cooked and the way that they are delivered to our tasters on the night.
Okay, very good. Larry, a question for you now about, we've seen this trial now, and there's a question come in about what other trials. So we've looked at kind of different cuts on this one. We're just wondering, what are the other trials that are planned for the next few years?
Okay, yeah. So as I mentioned then, so this year then we're looking at lamb finishing diet. So we're looking at a range of different diets then with the lambs, and to understand how do these diets affect eating quality and nutritional quality. As we've seen a little glimpse of this first year's trial, that grass-fed diet does have an impact on the nutritional quality. So that's something that we will be following up on. We're also looking at growth rate, and we've got some great farmers on board with the project this year who are recording live weights as well. And so that will give us a real insight as well into if that has an impact on eating quality, if they are gaining in fatness, etc., how that would affect that. And also we're looking at aging period this year. So aging period then is the amount of time that it takes for the meat to mature. And so we'll be understanding then what differences are there in 7 days, 14 days, etc., to understand how does aging impact. Also then the following trial, we will be looking at the age of the lamb. So understanding, does that have an impact on eating quality, and also gender effect then. So we'll be having castrates, ram lambs and ewe lambs as well. So yeah, lots to look forward to.
Yes. Yeah, and obviously we'll be looking to communicate these results either through our website or through more webinars like this.
Indeed.
Linda, we've got a question for you about the omega-3. So a question, what was the variation in omega-3 such as EPA?
Sorry, can you repeat that? What was the variation in?
In omega-3 such as EPA.
Ooh, okay, hang on a moment. I'll have to look that one up because I don't remember all these figures. But
it followed the alpha-linolenic and also the polyunsaturated fats, so that's really good. In terms of muscle cut was the main influence on that. However, I haven't got the exact concentration levels off the top of my head, but it was interesting that it followed the same as the polyunsaturated fats.
Yeah.
That's what you'd expect.
And EPA is coming out at about 30 mg per 100 grams of meat, and it went down to 27 in the loin. So it's fairly close and similar, EPA specifically. The variation between individual animals, there was variation, but we would have to look that up separately. And if somebody wants to know a bit more about that, we'll have to go back into the data and have a look at it and come back to them on that. But there was variation because there were a range of different diets being used by the farmers. So I would expect to see a range of values for EPA in there.
Great. Larry, we've got a question in about the kind of the consumers that we've got as part of the taste panel. And the question is on the kind of how do we select them, and are we selecting people that are more proactive towards lamb? Because there's a question here that says there's a high level of consumers claiming to eat lamb quite frequently. And did we go out to seek consumers that were eating lamb more than the average then?
Right. Okay. So what we did then is to advertise in that locality where we were having the taste event. So some of that was done by newspapers or radio events and get people interested. Once we had somebody that was interested in raising a group of 20 people. So these are people come to the event in groups of 20 and we serve them at 20 people at a time. And so what we did say is that it is a lamb tasting event so that they know it's lamb, but they don't know where it's come from. They don't know it's Welsh. And so we don't have that bias then. So we know we have lamb, people that are interested in lamb and do eat lamb. We wouldn't want to necessarily go and test vegetarians because they would have a totally different answer. So we are after people that enjoy lamb, but they don't know where it's come from.
And what was quite interesting in the results and some of Linda's demographic and consumer purchasing patterns results showed that actually we didn't have consumers that ate lamb regularly. There was some consumers that only occasionally ate lamb, and that's the kind of audience that we want to target. Is we want to get a cross section of the audience that are eating different lamb. Next question is for Linda. And there's a question here about consumers scored the meat samples from ram and castrated rams similarly. Would you have expected that before the trial?
Yes, I probably would. We've done a number of trials over here over in Ireland, looking at castrates versus rams, and normally you get very similar eating qualities for both of them. You may get occasional off flavors, but not necessarily due to the fact that it's a ram. So I'm not surprised to see that the rams and castrates are coming out very similar. That ties in with the experience that I've had in other trials. It's maybe not what is always expected, but when you actually take samples and compare them in a systematic way, then they tend to be pretty similar.
And a question for Larry is about the kind of results of the lamb and the lab work, if you like, from the lamb. So are we going to look at any other lamb nutritional quality factors, such as mineral and proteins?
Yeah. So we've got mineral results as well coming through with the trial. So we've got zinc and iron content of the lamb also being analysed, which is really great. We'll have further results for you then for the at the conference time for HCC conference. So that'd be great. And then also we'll be looking at protein levels in lamb this year as well. So if anybody's interested in knowing what information that holds, yeah, we'll have more updates next year.
Okay, great. And a question for Linda with regards to the willingness to pay. And we've got a question here, which is, were there any demographic differences in the willingness of the consumer to pay for the different quality of lamb?
Sorry, I couldn't hear that one. Is that one for me?
Yeah, sorry, Linda. There's a question here about, was there any differences between the demographics when it comes to the willingness to pay?
So
there were differences in age group that we found?
Right, yes, okay, yes, I've got it. Yeah, there was a difference, yeah, and it surprised us a little bit, in that what it showed was that while everybody was prepared to pay more for higher quality, the younger people were prepared to pay more than the older people were prepared to pay. So there was a definite trend that the oldest ones would pay modestly more for extra quality, whereas the younger folk would pay even more. So maybe people are becoming more discerning or more willing to pay for what they want as time goes on.
And Linda, in your experience of doing these kind of consumer taste panels, the distribution that we saw for the willingness to pay, is that what you'd expect in a trial like this?
I don't believe we've ever asked that question in exactly that way. Well, we've asked willingness to pay, but I haven't looked at the data to see was there an age effect. So it would be, we've got lots of data we could look at that way, but we've not asked that question. So I was slightly surprised. I would have thought that the silver-haired generation would maybe have more spare money and be more willing to pay for what they wanted. So just by hunch, I would have expected it to go the other way around, whereas the impoverished youngsters might be a little bit more penny pinching. But it appears to be the other way around, which is interesting.
But in the trials you've done previously, the kind of better than everyday quality and the premium have always achieved a premium when it comes to what the consumer is willing to pay in your trials? Yes. Okay.
I'm sorry, John, I didn't hear that one at all.
No. I was just asking, Linda, kind of, you've done a lot of taste trials over the years. You've done quite a few different ones. That distribution that we saw of the kind of premium compared to everyday quality and compared to unsatisfactory, is that the kind of spread you'd see quite regularly with the kind of how many and the difference in the kind of value that people were willing to pay?
Right. Was that again? I struggled to catch it. Is this about carcass fat grade or?
No. Okay, Larry.
Just a quick
okay,
overview
right.
as well. In
okay,
the beef
no,
queue,
I misheard you there. I'm sorry. I'm
right.
not hearing very well at all here.
That's okay. But in the beef queue trial that we've done with Hebiki Cymru and others, and IBAs and others, we've been finding like a similar pattern where that consumers are willing to pay more for quality graded meat. So that is something that you can see in the beef industry, and it's nice that it's reflecting also in the lamb industry too.
Okay, great. And I think that brings us to the end. We've had quite a few questions here, so thank you very much to both yourself, Larry, and to Linda for your time tonight. Very interesting presentations. And this is one of the the more recent webinar we're holding. We're planning to hold another one in a fortnight's time, and that's going to be on GrassCheck GB, which is an R&D project that we're hosting. But as part of Welsh Lamb Monday, we were also holding, we want to work with agriculture colleges in Wales. So as part of that, we did a competition with all the agri colleges in Wales. We held it last Thursday, and it was a series of questions on Welsh lamb. And I'm glad to say that the winner of that competition was Cain Pugh of Canlyniadau College. So very well done to Cain. It answered excellently. But thank you to everybody that took part in this, because the kind of work that we're doing through the Red Meat Development Programme and through this Welsh Lamb Meat Quality project is we want to disseminate as much of this information out as we can to our levy payers and to the industry in Wales. So the information that you've seen tonight will all be available in the report, and also if you've missed any of tonight's Facebook video, then it will be on our Facebook page, and it'll also be on our YouTube channel. So if anybody's got any interest in looking back and hearing those results, and they are very interesting for the first year, please go onto those channels and you can see the content. So apart from that, I'd just like to thank Eleri for your time tonight, and also to Linda. Thank you very much. Diolch yn fawr bawb. Thank you for joining us.
Diolch, thank you.